Get them out now. Get them out now.
I feel weird. All right, welcome to our first episode of Landscapes and Legacy, Building the Green Future. My name is Tiffany.
And I'm Rob.
And we're doing it.
We're doing this.
We're doing it.
We're actually doing it.
It's, yeah. So we're here today to kind of share our story about getting into the landscape industry and how we're living day by day. We're here to share stories from the landscape industry, especially the stories you don't usually hear.
Backstage
pass. Backstage pass, backstage access, VIP.
Behind the music.
Behind the scenes, hashtag.
Yeah, just telling all of us how you got here. How did you get to this point? How did you get to North by Northwest?
How I got here.
How'd you become Prez?
North by Northwest is my parents' company. My mother and father opened the business back in 2003. I was still in middle school. So a lot of people always ask me that. They're like, oh, did you grow up in the industry? And I'm like, nah. Actually, no.
Okay, so that was what,
2003. 2003. So I was 8th grade?
Okay.
Yeah, 8th grade. And it really kind of just happened. My dad was working previously with his brother at a land clearing company, if you will. And stuff happened and he eventually created his own company, which is North by Northwest. And it all kind of really started with my brothers. I, again, was in 8th grade, so I was in school.
And at that time, it was strictly residential lawn care.
Yeah,
type stuff.
What you know,
truck and trailer.
Yes, truck and trailer. And I remember my dad bought. When he left his previous job, he had an option to either keep his company truck or get a severance instead.
Okay.
So he had an F-350. It was pretty nice.
He went with the truck.
He did not go with the truck.
What?
He went with the money.
Okay.
And I think that's how he actually bought the land that they live on now.
Wow.
He used that money. Yeah, isn't that crazy? His very first truck that he got, it was I don't even know if it was the 1990s. I want to say it was a 1989 Ford F-150.
Nice.
This thing
Classic.
was a beater. It was a beater. And so really what happened is that Adam, my middle brother, we're closest in age. We're about a year and a month apart. My brother was mowing to save money for missionary trips or something, church.
Side job stuff.
Something like that. Yeah. So really my dad just kind of took over his customers and then just kind of went from there.
Wait, so Adam started this?
Technically. Not a lot of people think that. A lot of people think that my dad just whatever, but no, Adam's customers were really the first customers.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I remember at the time I was in private school in 8th grade, and my dad actually started mowing at the school.
For the school?
For the school. And it was, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if Jordan was working for him at the time, my oldest brother, but I just remember being in the classroom because we were in those trailer.
Oh, yeah?
What are those things called?
The mobile home?
Yeah, they're mobile homes. Yeah, then that's the classroom. So I remember being in class and hearing the mowers come by and you can hear it hitting the walls and stuff. And I just remember hearing comments from people about oh, the mowers. And I'm over here embarrassed because
I was going to say,
dad.
were you embarrassed?
Oh, yeah, I was really embarrassed. And
thinking back, that's pretty cool.
Yes. Yeah, it is. But at the time I was embarrassed. And
who knew where it was going?
I just remember him coming to pick me up in this truck because mind you, when he bought this truck, it was a poop brown. It was super ugly. And I think he painted it, but it was a super shoddy paint job. It was white, but it was dude, it looked like a can of spray paint. That's rough. It was cringe. So anyways, and so that's really how it started. And I was in high school and I graduated high school early because once I transferred from private school to public school, I had extra credits and they're like, hey, you can graduate early. And I was like, bet, let's do it. So after college, then I went to community college for a little bit, eventually went to Texas State and graduated from there in 2013. In towards the end of your college,
I was gonna back you up a little bit and just say you went to right after high school you went to community college. Did you already have something in mind that you were kind of going for?
Not really. I mean, I was gonna minor or something in business, okay. Right? But even still, that's kind of super broad. But right. I was it can hit a lot of things.
Yeah.
The general assumption was that I would join the company, but it wasn't ever really said. Right. Yeah, Tiffany, you're going to go to college. You're going to go to get a business degree so that you can come back after college and run the company. It was never...
That wasn't the plan.
No, it wasn't the plan. It was never really talked about. It was just kind of there.
Okay, so by the time you got to Texas State, did you have okay, you were always going to go for something business. Did you
Yeah.
keep that as like your major?
I actually minored in business.
Okay.
So I ended up majoring in consumer affairs. At the time, it was called something else. I can't remember. Consumer affairs with a minor in business. Yeah. And I specifically minored in business because I'm awful at math. And I knew that if I wanted to major in math, I would have to take like calculus and all. And I was like, I ain't going to make it. Like I barely survived pre-calculus, okay? Like I minored in it and I got what I wanted out of it, right? Because you have to take so many classes for a minor. So I took the classes that I thought were important.
Relevant to you.
So in your senior year, you have to do a internship. And so I remember having to do an internship and I needed money because I'm a broke college student. So I was like, well, whatever. I'll just go internship with my dad, kind of learn some things. And then, you know, he will also
You said this was
give me some
senior
money.
year?
This is my senior year. So this is probably around 2012 because I graduated in 2013. I went and did a short stint of internship with my dad and let's just say it did not go well. And I told my dad that I didn't want to work for him.
Based on your experience?
Yeah.
So what were you doing for him during this internship?
I you know, honestly, I remember like we went to a job site where they're installing irrigation and he was just kind of like showing me the ropes. And I remember him showing me the nozzles and I needed to take the tabs off of the nozzles, right? And I didn't know what the fucking idea what I was doing.
Now at this point, was Adam working in the company?
I think so,
Because
yes.
I know that he was also had a big part in bringing the irrigation side
Yes,
of
he
things
did.
into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure Adam was there because at this time I was in college. Yes. So, you know, it's not like I had any like set responsibilities. It was more so like, this is what I do. This is day in, day out. Yeah. I remember being in the truck driving between wherever the hell we were going and like falling asleep because I was like bored and tired and like, what am I doing? Yeah. And I mean, listen, I was 21, 22, like this, I was just like, this sucks. I don't want to do this. And, you know, I also knew that working with family it would just be a lot. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to deal with that. You know, I saw my brothers and my dad constantly talking about work. It was always work. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do that.
We hadn't mentioned Jordan, but yet, and he had always been on the maintenance side of things as well.
Yeah. For the longest time, they were both crew leaders for forever. So
both on the maintenance side, right? Before Adam kind of broke off and started to kind of do the construction side of things, if you will, the install.
Yeah, they were both at that time. So this is right before I had come into the company. So at the time, I remember that heavily mowing because that's what we started. We started doing mowing. And then my dad got his irrigator's license in 2006.
Nice.
And then
that was a while ago.
Fun fact, he got his irrigator's license because my little boyfriend at the time that lived in Cat Hollow, his dad wanted an irrigation system. So my dad actually ended up installing an irrigation system at my little boyfriend's house. Middle school.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
Isn't that crazy? I always forget about that. Yeah, that guy is long gone. But so...
Okay, so how long... Okay, so you came to do the internship. How long were you before you were like, all right, this is...
It was probably like 2 weeks.
Oh, really? I was thinking months.
No, it was like 2 to 3 weeks because I was still living in St. Marcus. So I would be in St. Marcus, right, for the weekend or whatever it was, and then I would come up here like Monday through Thursday.
Because they were operating out of his
his
shop.
house in Cedar Park. Yeah. So it was like an hour and a half away from college. Not crazy, but you know, at the time, like I was in a relationship and I didn't want to be away from him. And like being up here, you know, I don't have any friends up here. I just have my family, and all they're doing is working. And I'm like, nah, no thanks. So yeah, so then I told my dad, no thank you, like I don't want to work for you anymore. And I don't really recall that conversation because it wasn't like a huge blowout or anything. Right. It was just like, okay, sure, but what are you gonna do? And I'm like, I don't know. So anyways, finished college. I then moved to Houston because my ex at the time was from Houston, and so we moved there, and it was an utter disaster for that's a whole nother story for another day. Lo and behold, about 6 months later, I actually became pregnant with now my oldest son. And my ex was actually no longer working in Houston. He was working in College Station. So I was in Houston by myself with like his friends and family because we were staying in their house. And I was like,
He was working out in College Station?
Yeah, so I was by myself in Houston, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, this is not good. And especially if I'm pregnant, like, this is not heading in the right direction.
So this is what, 2014, 2015?
This is at the end of 2013. So I graduated in May of 2013, moved to Houston. I found out I was pregnant sometime in December. I do remember taking like a mega bus from Houston to Austin to come visit my family for Christmas. And I remember I just found out I was pregnant. We're totally going on a tangent, by the way.
I'm loving it. We can edit it out if you don't.
It doesn't really matter. It's not a secret. So I had taken a mega bus to Austin because I couldn't afford to gas and everything, but I could afford a bus ticket. And I just found out I was pregnant. And I love salt and vinegar chips. Like, that's my shit, right?
They're good. Good, solid choice.
Someone on that bus was eating salt and vinegar chips, and I wanted to barf the entire time because I had morning sickness and whatever. So went home, visited with family, and didn't tell them at the time I was pregnant because I was like, what the hell am I going to do?
It was still so fresh for you.
Yeah. So then went back to Houston, and I was just like, this sucks. I was working at European Wax Center at their front desk and, getting paid nothing.
$10 an hour, $12 an hour.
Yeah. I don't even know if it was that, to be honest. And so then I messaged my mom on Facebook Messenger, because I didn't have a phone at the time. My ex had the phone. We only had one phone. And because he was in College Station, I was like, look, you keep the phone, like, I'll, whatever. And so I messaged my mom on Facebook Messenger, and I was like, hey, like, can I move back home? And she was like, sure. Because at this time, my dad was not talking to me. He had cut me off, turned off my phone, was like, I'm not paying for anything anymore. If this is how you want to live your life, I don't agree with it.
Because you had moved to Houston and to be with your ex and all
Yeah, and I wasn't doing shit.
Right.
And he was paying for my car insurance and my phone. And he's like, you want to be an adult? Be an adult. So anyways, and so I collected my last check from European Wax Center and filled up my gas tank, gave the rest of my money to the people I was staying at because I owed them money, and packed up my 2 dogs and literally all my belongings in my little Saturn car, came to Austin.
Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Yeah. I almost didn't make it, actually. I had to stop at, that really small Buc-ee's on 290?
Yes, yeah.
I had to stop there to get some gas. Dude, I probably put in $5 and I made it home.
Thank God.
On E. Yeah. So
Saturn for the win.
Yeah. And that Saturn was the most reliable car I've ever had. So got home, of course my dad's like, why are you here? You pregnant? And I was like, yeah. And so that was a fun conversation. But really, and that's how I stumbled into it. They really needed someone in the office. So at this point, so now it's 2014. I moved home in February. It was like January, February of 2014. And pregnant, no money, anything. And so I just started kind of working in the office, answering phone calls, setting calendar events, sending estimates, emails and stuff, because at the time, both of my brothers were still in the field. My dad was kind of like the salesperson, if you will. And there was like no one in the office. So my dad was doing the invoicing, collecting payments, paying vendor bills, payroll.
How are you sending these estimates? How are you building these estimates?
Word doc.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like straight, just like on a Word doc. And typical of my dad, he would write it on a notepad, literally pages.
He was doing this until he left the office just a few years ago.
He was very stuck in his ways. And so he would just write it up and hand it to me, and then I would type it up and then email it, right? And just over time, kind of learning, how things worked and what it should say, and a lot of trial and error. Because he was only running the company how he best thought to run a company, right? He didn't have bookkeeping experience or any of that stuff, just his experience from life. Yeah, that's kind of how I fell into it. Literally fell into it.
That is crazy.
February 2014 is when I have my start date as.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew where you were going?
Yeah.
It's funny. Every time I feel like I've asked you this before this idea even came into play, but I've asked you kind of like, where did you come from?
Yeah.
And you tell me something different every single time. Like, not different as in the story.
Well, I add on to it.
Yeah, I learned a new detail about it, or a new little thing, and it's like, man, this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes when you think back, you remember old details and stuff. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I wasn't slapping grass down as a young kid, or I didn't know plant material. Like I didn't know anything about landscaping when I came on board.
No, and that's why I was kind of asking more so about the estimate building. Like, how were you if Jay was running around in the streets and so were the boys, and you were maybe building an estimate based off of notes? I mean, did he give you some rates to work with? Did he give you like material list?
He
Did
would
have
literally
something for you?
handwrite
The estimate.
everything.
You just professionalized
I
it.
literally just typed it up.
That's crazy.
And made it look pretty. Yeah.
That's insane.
Crazy.
But that's cool. And that is a crazy way, but you really did. And I feel like the same thing kind of happened later on down the line, probably with irrigation. I don't know if you
Yeah.
But like just seeing so many notes and what needed to be done, and this is the rate we've established and so on. You're a pretty knowledgeable person in irrigation for somebody who's never changed a sprinkler.
Right. And you know who taught me how to use PCS? Pro Contractor Studio, which is to do the irrigation drawings?
Don't you dare tell me Jay.
Jay?
No.
Swear.
That's awesome.
Isn't that crazy?
That's really cool.
Yeah, Jay showed me the irrigation side of things. And then Jordan was doing the landscaping sort of things because he was dabbling in landscape design. Another side story, we were like a part of like Angie's List back in the day. And so we did like a special or coupon or whatever for like landscape design. And so we did that and we sold way more than we probably should have. And so Jordan got like over bombarded with doing. So we sold a bunch of landscape designs and Jordan couldn't keep up with it. And so really I was just like, okay, show me. Teach me how to do it. You go to these job sites, talk with the customer, figure out what they want, come back to the office, and then I'll put the design together for you, do the takeoff, and then you can put together the estimate. And that's how kind of I got into the whole landscape design thing. It really like went more than that because I didn't really like what my brother was putting together. I'd be like, well, you should use these plants or you should do that. And he'd be like, you know what? Why don't you just come with me?
And coming into this, you didn't know anything about plants or anything?
No, nothing. No, I didn't know the types of grass. I was like, how do you look at this grass and know that it's St. Augustine versus Bermuda? I don't get it. It looks like grass. And really just over time and like seeing it or even plants, like I would get a plant list from like Site One and I would look and be like, what's this plant? I don't know what this is. And I would Google it. And just over time doing it over and over again and seeing in person and on lists and stuff, I just kind of
learned. That's so cool. That is really cool. And it's just crazy how you just kind of like, you're literally like kind of like spread out through every facet of it.
Yeah, I mean, because you find a need and someone's got to fill it.
Yep.
At the time, it was just me in the office.
And sometimes those landscape designs, even the irrigation designs, can be tedious.
Yeah.
And so, if you become really good at it and really fast at it, and fast and good at the same time, then it's like nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of intro of how I got into it. Now, what about you?
So the origin story for me really is with irrigation. And I was waiting tables. I had just moved back to Texas. Had been living overseas, had did all my high school overseas, was spending a little time. I did spend a little time at Texas State, but and I think that based on your timeline there, I think that we probably were around like in San Marcos around the same time.
Sounds like it,
because I was there from 2010 to 2011.
Yeah,
that's kind of, and then I was like, I gotta get out of here because I was just causing trouble and getting myself in trouble, and so went on a different adventure. Went overseas again. I really invested into trying to become extremely fluent in Spanish.
No, can I ask you, did you grow up learning Spanish?
No.
Okay, so English was your first language.
Yes. And
I feel like we need to clarify.
So my mom is from Panama.
Thank you.
And I was obsessed with telling people that I was that I was Panamanian. And so, that was immediately after that, if I couldn't speak Spanish, they were like, yeah, right.
Yeah,
because,
sure.
I look so Panamanian. And so I got super serious about it. I mean, starting in middle school, started taking it in middle school, probably the only middle schooler taking Spanish seriously.
Yeah.
And then I took it all 4 years of high school, went to Texas State, realized that was not going to be a good fit. And then I had the opportunity to move to Venezuela, and that was supposed to be for a summer. And by the end of the summer, I was like, I'm not leaving this country. It's the best. Which is, I mean, it was great for an expat to be there and kind of have the experience that I was having.
Right.
I got to work in the embassy, which was a really cool experience. I worked with nothing but Venezuelan people on the team. And so I really had just every opportunity to practice Spanish every single day, conversationally.
Do they learn English in school?
They do, yeah.
Okay.
For the most part, yeah. The people that I would interact with spoke English, at least to some degree. And, it was conversational Spanish and slang and things like this, not, yellow and blue and cow and dog.
Not the proper.
Right. but
Spanish.
it was awesome. It was really good. And so, okay, so fast forward to when I did have to leave. I was there for, I think, a total of just over 2 years. I came back again, kind of still, I was about 21 at this point, and I still didn't kind of know what I wanted to do, but I got a job waiting tables. First one was at Cotton Patch. That was my first table waiting job, and I was there for 3 months, and it was cool, fun. I made some friends, again, kind of establishing myself as a youngster in Georgetown area. And then shortly after that, moved over to Applebee's just across the highway, and I was there for
the restaurant world is a whole.
It's a monster. Yeah. It's an underworld.
Yeah.
So I moved to Applebee's, a little more corporate, a little different, but still, just as bad as they make fun of it, but in a good way. So I was waiting tables there. Other than kitchen staff, nobody really spoke Spanish there. The general manager spoke Spanish. He was from Bolivia, of all places.
Wow.
And so he loved me because I showed up, and at this point I'm fresh out of Venezuela, and I'm like dying to speak Spanish to anybody.
Probably
that
have an
listened.
accent.
Yeah, I mean, again, I dated a girl for 8 months there that didn't speak any English.
Oh,
which,
wow.
Again, that's like just another I just had to speak Spanish. I had no choice. So I got back, and I would speak Spanish to anybody who would listen to me, and it was like my party trick. And so I was the designated person when when a group would come in and they didn't speak any English. They were like, Rob. And so that was always a funny thing to go up to the table and kind of speak Spanish the way that I do, and people would always be like,
I bet you got
crap.
so many looks.
Yeah, and I got great tips too,
I bet.
on those tables. They would just be like, they would love me, and they would come back to see me. And so somebody had overheard me speaking Spanish, and this guy happened to open or have an irrigation company, strictly repair. And so he was like,
was this one of your tables or just a table nearby?
This was a table nearby.
Okay.
He kind of reached out and was like, hey man, I know that I see that you speak Spanish very well. And he kind of like phrased it in such a way where he was like, if you ever want like a big boy job, you should, think about irrigation. And I was like, I didn't even know what irrigation was.
Because most people, I think, sprinklers. Yeah.
And so, and I think that I probably was like, I was like, irrigation. And he was like, it's, fixing sprinklers, installing sprinklers, that stuff. And so I was like, ooh, I don't know anything about this. I don't know, and at the time I was still clinging to like enjoying my crazy server style schedule of like, wake up whenever you want or, whatever.
To be in your 20s.
Yeah. Working late, working with friends and all the drama that comes with working in a restaurant and all that stuff. But I kind of was like, I always, and it's going to sound silly, but even at 21, I really craved financial stability. And so it was difficult for me to really achieve that.
Yeah. And also I feel like your parents really instilled that in you.
Definitely.
Because it's not normal for a 20-year-old to be like, I need to be financially responsible.
Thanks, Dad. Traumatized me. In a good way, though.
PTSD.
I mean, it was positive traumatizing.
I like that.
Yeah,
positive traumatizing.
Yeah, he really did instill that. And I always had a great time and had fun as a kid, but I always was do the right thing, and part of the right thing to me was being stable, making good choices, smart, and always kind of with that kind of financial stuff in my mind. It was very important to me to have my own place. It was very important to me to have my car, and and I always like to go out and stuff, so I like to have my money. And so waiting tables was great for quick cash. I could pick up shifts if I needed to, if I spent too much money or whatever. But I really wanted that fixed income. I wanted to start to learn and how to budget. To
be a big boy?
Yeah, to be a big boy, to get that big boy job. And so I was like, okay, Monday through Friday wouldn't be that bad. And at first I remember telling myself I'll and I told Applebee's too, I was like, I'm going to start this job. It's going to be full time. Well, going back, he offered for me to come in and do a ride along with a technician.
Okay.
So I went in, and it was he was very small. He was still cruising around in a marked up tech truck himself. He wasn't running very many calls. Yeah.
Okay.
He was doing more QC kind of stuff. He had a subcontracted technician, another one, a subcontracted technician, but that gentleman is still there to this day. And I think he's a full-blown employee, but he's been with him the whole time, ride or die. And then he had this guy that he allowed me to ride along with. So, and the way that this company was kind of set up was you'd have kind of one you'd have two experienced guys in the truck, but one was definitely geared more towards the sales portion of it, because we were doing everything except for the knocking on door-to-door part of it. We were doing we were going up to cold call houses, and so you call somebody, offer them, probably
do you want an irrigation check?
Explain to them the importance of their irrigation system.
Yeah.
Then get them to agree to do an inspection. You come out and do this inspection. You go through, find any repairs, any upsell kind of opportunities, things like this. Write up an estimate on the spot, and then do the work. Offer to do do the work right there and then.
So that was what your ride along consisted of?
That was what my
of
ride
them
along
doing
was, and that was what, if I wanted to join this company, that's what I was going to do. I would probably ride along for a little while, gain some experience, and then he would then stick me in a truck to do basically the same thing. The goal always being towards like the sales portion of it. But obviously, the more you know, the more you can sell.
Exactly.
So I remember like that ride along, I was in the back of this extended cab F-150. It was kind of tight fit. And we had to go pick up his helper, his irrigation helper that morning. So I'm talking to this gentleman, nice old man, knew the history of irrigation.
So the old man only spoke English.
Only spoke English.
And the helper?
Did not speak very much English at all.
Okay.
Which was...
Hence the need for you.
Yes, exactly. I mean, most of the guys that were on the helping side or on the installation side, they only spoke Spanish. Like, they really did not speak any English. So we pick up this helper, and this was kind of like where it really began, where my irrigation kind of like adventure really began. The guy got in the truck. I remember him kind of looking at me skeptically, like, oh God, this guy's going to last, you know? And so, but I kind of looked for my moment and started speaking Spanish to the guy. And so he was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, from that point on, the guy that was...
Pulled out the party trick?
I pulled out that party trick. And the older gentleman that I was riding along with was almost annoyed because I would be just chopping it up all day with this guy. Mm-hmm. So I was hanging out with this guy. His name was Juan. And he was teaching me everything. We would be doing backflow replacements, pipe breaks, sprinkler head replacements, nozzle replacements, all of this stuff. He's teaching me just all of this stuff. And this is all in like the course of one day. So that was my one day ride along. I think I kind of slept on it for like a week or two. And I think I actually ended up still waiting tables for a little while. And I had told Applebee's that I was kind of like considering taking on a full-time job Monday through Friday, that I would still pick up night shifts and weekends and stuff like this. Which wasn't going to happen. I didn't know that at that time, but that was not going to happen.
Well, yeah, and I could understand wanting to have that as like a backup.
Yeah, it was cool. They kept me on the roster. They always kept me on the roster.
That's nice.
Technically, I never quit. I probably could go pick up a shift. No, I'm just kidding.
But you get that employee discount?
I left Applebee's. So I went and actually I picked up another waiting job in Sun City. They had redone one of the clubs, and so I started waiting tables there. I did really well for like a month, but then I was kind of like, this is just not what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm really tired because at this point I did start with American Irrigation. Yes, I did both for a little while. Like I would pick up as few evening shifts during the week as possible, but if they needed somebody, they would call me.
Right. Yeah. Just hey, FYI.
Saturday, Sunday morning was like gold. But then I was like, I'm working Monday through Friday. Like I want my weekends to like hang out and stuff. Which at first was like a little bit rocky too, because most of my friends were still waiting tables and stuff.
Yeah, it's like
they were busy.
While you're off, they're working.
I'm just going to spend money and hang out with them at the restaurant.
Yeah, I might as well be working at the same time.
So that was how it kind of came about, and I followed this gentleman who didn't speak. I learned all of my irrigation base foundation knowledge all in Spanish. Some words I didn't even know how to say in English.
Wow, that's cool.
It was different.
Yes,
it was different, but it was great. I felt like, and I don't know how this could be taken, but I felt like I really learned the right way.
Yeah, I mean, you learned hands-on.
Yes.
Because most people, well, I wouldn't say most people, I feel like most people will learn it like on the book end of things, get their license, whatever, and then go out and get field experience. Right. Which takes longer.
Yes. And sometimes I feel like that field experience can almost set you up for failure because, especially in the repair world, if everything was installed perfectly and by the book, there probably wouldn't be that.
There wouldn't be any repairs.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be so busy.
You would have like general maintenance, but there wouldn't be
crazy stuff that you find.
Yeah.
And so, I really had a great experience with it. I remember I used to be terrified of wire tracking. Like, you'd have a cut wire somewhere in like a conventional system, and I would just like immediately like bail out and be like, oh, I'm going to need to call in a senior technician and all this other stuff. But that ended up being one of the things that I love to do now.
Interesting.
Yes, it's very hard, but if you can become good at it, it is a gold skill. It is a serious skill. But I was really good at it.
Talk about finding a needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
But at least you have the locator.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so that's how I got into the industry, and at that time, zero landscape knowledge. Really, my joke was like, I don't know how much water it needs. I just know how to get water on it. That was because people would always ask me.
Yeah.
They would always ask us as techs, like, hey, you keep planting this thing, but it's dying. Is it too much water? And I'm like, I don't know, but it's getting water.
I could see it.
It's getting water.
So you were essentially an irrigation repair technician for how long?
I was at that company for 4 years.
4 years, okay. And then after that, you went where?
So during my time there, I had always kind of played with the idea, two ideas, either figuring out my way back to college or going into the military. And so that was those were kind of my conversations. And the company knew it. They were always very supportive if that was something that I wanted to do. And so I ended up going with the latter and pursuing a career in the Navy. So I went to the recruiter and I started kind of getting that ball rolling. At that time, I had saved up some money. I left when I was like just about to turn 25. Again, that I had another opportunity to go to South America, Nicaragua. I had another chance to go overseas into Latin America, which I was like, heck yeah. In my mind thinking like, it's going to be just like Venezuela.
Right.
It was not. It was beautiful, but it was different. And I still had a great experience there, just different. But I spent about 6 months there hanging out with my parents, kind of like letting them know what I was going to be. I was having some trouble because I had graduated in a British international school, so they were like having some trouble kind of like validating my high school diploma. I was born not in the United States, so they were having trouble validating my birth certificate. So there was just like a lot of these hangups. Plus, the classification that I was going for, as far as like the job I wanted in the Navy, they were pushing me really. I had done really well on my ASVAB, and they were pushing me to these other like kind of jobs, and I was really dead set on doing what both my dad and my grandfather did, which was like the construction battalion. So they were like, we don't have anything available, and this is like, well, I don't know. So I've talked to some military guys, and they say this is like classic recruiter technique.
Sounds like it.
Like, yeah, that's not good. But you go over here, we're gonna get you in this job. And so I was just like, no, like, you know, that you're fully allowed to say like, no, call me when there is a job in what I want available, even if that's 6 months from now.
Yeah,
however.
I'll wait.
And so that's
I'm
what
not
they
desperate.
said. Yeah, they pretty much were like, I should have been. But they were pretty much like, oh, we don't know how long it could be. Okay, we will. And so I left, went to Nicaragua. I was kind of like working out, trying to be healthy, doing a little bit of light partying. I got involved in the Marine security guards that were stationed over there and would exercise with those guys and also party with those guys.
Jeez.
And then they called me up and they said, hey, it's, you know, like it's coming up now. We've got a slot for you. Your ship date's going to be in September. I think it was September of that year. And this was, I want to say 2017 or 2018. And so came back
to the States.
Came back to the States for a week. I did like the MEPS check-in and everything like that. When you go out and you do your initial swear-in and stuff. We're all in like regular clothes, but they like do all the medical stuff. You basically spend an entire day like doing all of these like tests and you know, drug tests, all that stuff. So that was cool. Came back. So I was like,
you're waiting around. I
was just waiting, and so I was like starting to search for jobs back home, and I was like, I'm gonna go home. This was like I was starting to like make this decision, like, you know what, like I'm gonna pack up my stuff here. I'm gonna go back to my house, hang out with my friends, because
and just wait.
Yeah, because I only have a few months left. I want to go back. I want to spend time with my friends, and I want to like I'll work and get a job. And so I was like, oh man, what's this place? Ewing. Yeah, and it was the Georgetown store, which was like it's Georgetown
right next to your.
My duplex was in Gerald, and so it was like a 10-minute drive, if that. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Irrigation supply.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, so, I just did this for 4 years.
Right. And so I didn't realize at first it was a supply house until I got there, and then I did my interview. Again, pulled out the party trick. There was nobody there that spoke Spanish, and they were like, perfect. Sold. Yeah, we need you. And so they hired me like pretty much right away. But
life happened.
The military wasn't meant to be for me, or the Navy wasn't meant to be. And I continued on my time at Ewing, you know, being the counter guy that spoke Spanish, which it was great too, because this was also like starting to expand a little bit into like the chemical side of things.
Right. More than just irrigation.
More than just the irrigation side. And so that was cool. And so they did primarily use me as like delivery driver muscle, like that, unload the trucks, load up the trucks, that sort of thing. Got on the counter as much as I could and would talk to technicians. And of course, if somebody came in for Spanish, they were like, Rob!
Yeah, please help me!
Yeah, so I had a great time there. But I ended up staying there. I think I was supposed to be there about 6 months total before my original plan. And then I ended up being there in total about 18 months. My last 3 months, I started running into somebody on a delivery site, and it was a builder. I was delivering to all the production home installs that were happening in this neighborhood. It's actually your neighborhood where you live.
How crazy would it be if you delivered the materials to my house? You probably did.
I might have. And I didn't even know that was your neighborhood until like
later. Yeah.
But so I'm delivering to this neighborhood, which is going to be funnier because the detail gets even like smaller world, that the guy that I was running into was Adam. And Adam was working for your brother. He was working for Pulte at the time. And he had he had worked a little while at Ewing as well, at a different branch. We had run into each other at a safety meeting, never really talked. But I immediately recognized him when he came up on me when I was delivering. So I would deliver to this site at least 3 or 4 times a week. And every time I'd go there, I'd see his big old Jeep come rumbling around the corner. He'd see the blue truck, and he'd come up, and nicest guy, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? And we would just start chopping it up, talking, and all kinds of stuff. We're kind of like realizing that we have some stuff in common, and then, he's asking me about my experience at Ewing, which then kind of led to me telling him, well, I was a technician. So then we start kind of nerding out about irrigation stuff, and then he's kind of like, dude, like, do you ever want to get back in the field? Like, he was like, we would just talk about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we exchanged video game information too at that time.
Nerd.
But eventually it led to him kind of asking me like, hey, like, would you ever be interested in getting out in the field again? And I was kind of like, well, yeah, honestly, and personally, like at Ewing, when I would talk to technicians and stuff like this, I kind of like had that hunger to be like, man, I don't want to be like selling you and telling you how to fix
behind the counter.
Things. I want to be the guy that's like figuring that stuff out.
Yeah. Move over.
Yeah.
Let me do it.
Some guys would come in and I'd be like, why are you doing it that way? You should do it this way. And they'd be like, holy crap, I never thought of that. And so I was just like, man, I was hungry for it, and I knew that there was way more money.
Yeah.
Not to say anything bad about where I was working at that time and what they were paying me or anything like that, but I just knew that there was much more money in the field side.
Yeah.
And so when he brought that up, I was kind of, again, life had kind of crushed me about a year before that. Wasn't planning on being where I was at that time. And so I was kind of like,
why not?
This is a sign.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know what, I would. And so he kind of explained to me that he was going to be leaving the company that he was working at the Pulte, and going back to his family's company. And so, I always do like to joke about this. Adam is, of course, a little darker complected than you. So I knew him. Adam,
like easily like 5 shades darker than me.
For sure. And so I always thought he was Latino. Adam Martin? Oh, that's Adam Martin.
Martin,
obviously.
yeah.
And so he was like, he starts telling me, like, I'm going to go back to my dad owns a landscaping company. And I was like, checks out.
Yep.
I knew it. So he was like, I'm gonna be going there in like the next couple of weeks. And I've been talking to them, and I think that they're ready to bring on another irrigation technician. If they are, is that something you'd be interested in? And I said, definitely. And so I think a week or two passed by. He must have had made that transition, and then he reached out to me and said, hey man, are you still interested? Yes. All right, let's meet up. So we went to Pine House, had some pizza, had a couple beers, and he kind of basically gave me like a pre-interview.
Right, yeah, getting to know you.
I think that he just kind of felt like maybe it would be a good fit. And then as we started to talk and get on like the knowledge side or the technical side of things in our conversations, he realized, oh, this guy, he is a technician. And then once it got to the point of like him pre-interviewing me, at that point he was like, look, you got the job, but this is what is going to happen. This is how it's going to be. This is where we're at. This is where we're going. He was even telling me some of that stuff. Like at that time, he was like talking pipe dreams about having multiple area managers over neighborhoods.
Oh,
Isn't
wow.
that funny?
That is crazy.
Yeah. And he was like, you can start out as a technician, you put in your time.
Yeah.
I'm going to need help covering these neighborhoods in different areas because we're growing. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I remember going home and telling like, now my wife, like, oh, it went so well, and in a year's time, he said I could be a manager. It was amazing, and so I was so excited. So they scheduled the interview. He said it's gonna be my brother and my dad, and I was like, okay. I came down. It was in this office. It was set up a little differently, and I remember being really intimidated. I see Jordan, never met him before. He's just a bigger Adam. But then I look at Jay.
Martin.
I'm like. Hey, this is Dad? No, he's white like me. And so I was, I remember just kind of like processing that confusion and being like, okay, something, I'm not sure what's going on here. This is like a funny story about Jay too, is that I had instantly recognized him.
Yeah, from going in to Ewing.
Yes, and I didn't have a positive experience with him at that time.
Makes sense.
He's a tough guy. And,
he's very to the point, right. Really no fluff in there. And if you're faint of heart or like, sensitive, you'll take offense to it easily.
I was nervous around him for a while. Now I think he's the sweetest man. But
he's really a softie at heart. Yes, once you get to know him.
And as time has gone on, he's become even more.
Oh yeah, he's a sweetheart.
But he was just he's very tough. He's got that booming voice.
I'm sure he was grilling you.
And at that time, like when that experience, again, this is like my flashback. I walk in and I'm like, oh shit. Because he had come into Ewing. I had opened the store that day. It was like early. I was the only person in the branch. Technically, it was before 7, so we weren't open. I was on the phone taking an order. And he got stuff and was like standing at the counter and was like
impatiently waiting,
wanting to leave. And I was just kind of, I think I might have even lied, but I kind of like gestured like, I'll be there in just a minute. And I think he might have given me an additional 30 to 60 seconds on that.
Yeah.
And then I saw him grab like a Ewing pad, write down some things, came into like the bullpen where I was on the phone.
Behind the counter.
Slapped it down and said, here's my PO, I gotta go. And then just left with whatever he had. I don't even know what he had. Not even sure if I processed that. So, but I was just like, oh man. And I know that he did not enjoy that experience himself. And so again, that was exactly what came, like as soon as I walked in, I was like, oh God, this guy thinks I'm an asshole.
He probably didn't even remember that.
No, luckily he was like, I was working at Ewing. Shorts were allowed. I came to and I was at work.
Did he comment on your
immediately? Shorts? He's like, shorts. And I was like, oh man. And like, I think Jordan like stepped in and was like, oh, those guys those guys wearing shorts over there. And I was like, oh gosh, man, like off to a great start. And so, yeah. So the interview went well. I remember your dad being kind of like, our parents are similar ages. Our dads are the same age. Similar
both of our moms are foreign.
Yes, similar backgrounds with our dads in the military and stuff, and just kind of having that sort of international experience. And I remember him kind of just being interested in that and appreciating that with what also had been, like, obviously I've been here now for a while. I was getting into irrigation and was into it, and so he was just like, oh man, this is so cool. And so it turned into a really good fit, And at that time, it was kind of a mixture of doing some repairs and going and doing like kind of the beginning stages of QC on our production home installs and making repairs on those.
Yeah,
delivering
and you worked for me, actually. I didn't even interview, but you worked for me.
No, you were my boss.
Yeah, at the time I was handling the irrigation repair scheduling.
I would come in, you had that little blue chair in here. I'd come in, I'd sit in the morning, wait patiently
here's your
for my work orders.
Yep.
And you'd tell me if there was anything crazy on the list or anything like that. And sometimes you wouldn't even turn around from your computer.
Yeah, here, take it. Go.
I thought I was scared of Jay. I became very scared of you. And I ran around in the little lunchbox van and did that. Until, I just started it kind of branching out from there. Yeah. Adam obviously would call and check in on me periodically, and then that kind of became like a mentorship, friendship, and I started, he started to want to teach me things, and I wanted to learn everything I could from him, which turned into kind of getting more involved on the install side, and then of irrigation, and then that led to the landscape side of things, and then,
And now here you are.
Yeah.
Head of construction.
Yeah. Wild. Stressful.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
It's positive. I tell people, I have described it as organized chaos.
Yeah.
It can be, especially with the production home install side of things.
There's a method to the madness. Though.
Yes. And there's good days and bad days. And I think that happens no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. Wouldn't you mean like no matter what career?
Yeah. No matter what career or what part of it you're on. I mean, you're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. There are going to be crazy days. There's going to be fun days. But I think that like really what kind of helps people to shine is like being able to like thrive, maybe thrive definitely, but survive and kind of live in that chaos, because I talk about it
and be efficient in the chaos.
Right.
Because the chaos happens all the time. But if you're as chaotic as the situation is, I mean, good luck. You're not going to get anything done.
Oh, you're going to cause problems.
Yeah, and it's going to be messy and
right. You're causing more work, really, at the end of it. And so, honestly, when that happens, sometimes I think that, it can be difficult, but you have to like kind of like nip that shit in the butt because, you're just letting a problem snowball.
Don't kick the can down the road.
Right. And I think that does become challenging. But like the organized chaos, I think that, I don't know what I would do without it. Really, I think that it's a transition out of it. I think that I say it's organized chaos, but once you've been doing it, it stops being that and it starts just being kind of what you do.
Yeah, right. It's the norm.
Yeah, and so I'm sure that as you have kind of ascended to where you're at, definitely I know that I have experienced this. You know this from me and about me, that as I have kind of had to delegate and trust other members of the team with certain things that, at one time were your baby, at one time was somebody else's baby, then they, sometime they were my baby, and it was very difficult to let some of those things go, and you end up having like the ability to kind of be able to really look at stuff and dial things in, polish things up, and make sure that things are running efficiently and smoothly. Not everybody's going to do it exactly the way you did it, but
it really doesn't matter. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But really, the end result, as long as the end result is what I need and what
I need point B. If you're getting there and it's not
it's not ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous
Yeah.
or incredibly slow. Then
that's
you know
okay.
what? That's
Yeah.
okay. That's your way.
Right, because what works for me isn't always going to work for you.
But I think that just going through that transition and you know watching somebody else kind of start to really make that organized chaos their baby, me not have it so much.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's sort of like
Oh, it's great.
it's almost like I don't know.
Is humbling the right word? I don't know. It's just yeah.
It's a very cool thing to really get to be fortunate enough to experience.
Yeah.
That I get to be in this position where I do have and have been able to build
Learn
a team
from the bottom.
right?
Yeah.
And keep on building a team and really like you know again remember them like the good old days talking about them like their high school football, but like you know when you and Adam were really in the trenches, you internally, Adam running all over the place, and you know it was just kind of like
I don't miss those days, but I miss those days.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling
because without being in the trenches, I wouldn't have the experience and the knowledge that I have now.
Right.
The hands-on, because you can tell me all day long how it's going to be, but until I live and breathe it, it's not going to click.
Right.
And that applies to really anybody. I mean, you hear a lot, like all these CEOs. The CEO of Chipotle went to Starbucks, and you're like, Chipotle, Starbucks, like food, coffee, like sure, it's the same realm, but it's you know, but that's just like a plug and play. Versus, I bet that there's probably someone in their industry or company that started from the bottom and worked their way up, and that person knows way more than the new CEO that just came in.
The new CEO is asking that person right now.
Exactly.
No, but it's been a journey. I never thought I would. I know that you have a different sort of never thought I was going to be here.
Yeah.
Or that was never the plan, and this was never the plan, but it really worked out. It turned into a blessing and really a passion. It's cool. As big as it is, as big as it's getting, as big as it's going to continue to be and grow to. It's just awesome that you still have this like family feel to it.
Yeah. And that's extremely, extremely important, especially for me. Like, we want like the corporate-esque of it, right?
Well, you need
the structure.
Once you get to a certain size, you need the structure.
For sure. But I still want it to be family.
Right.
You know, and I need the trust for the position that I'm in. I need to be able to trust the people that are doing the work. Because if the trust isn't there, then that means I'm doing it, and then that's not feasible for me.
But do you think that the industry itself, landscape, has something to do with that sort of deeper need for the trust amongst the team? Because I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if it's necessarily like just a landscape industry thing. I think it's really just like a work career thing.
Yeah, but I think that like, especially like on a team sort of style, like if you were if working in like an office setting, I don't know what it would be, but let's just call it a data entry position.
Sure.
And you had a person on your team that comes in from 9 to 5 and they do their data entry, they get their stack and they move this stack to this stack and that's the end of their day and good to go and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you really need to trust that person as long as you've seen them do it 2 weeks in a row that they know how to do what they're doing?
Saying, yeah.
I just feel like
because that's a singular job versus like with landscape, it's a group effort, right?
No,
like
it does.
You need the people in the office, you need the people out in the field, and then you need the in between,
right?
And because you can't be a one man show,
no,
in landscaping. I mean, I'm sure you can. I'm not going to say you cannot. You won't be able to grow.
Yeah.
The way where we're at. And I say that all the time with like our family, like with me and my brothers, like this only works if we're all in it. If, you know, it would be fine if one of us wanted to leave, but it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same impact, the same legacy, right? So for me, it's really important to make sure that we keep that family atmosphere and camaraderie.
No, I think you guys do a great job of that. I really do, especially like, you know, even this year we've been, you guys have been like really like heading up this, you know, a focus on culture and making sure that sticks around because I don't know, I think that in the growth path, you know, you were coming from smaller where it was easy. It was at a smaller scale. It's easier to have that family feel.
Yeah.
You don't have so much going on.
Right. We had like 20 employees, if that.
Right. And so, you know, it's much easier to like achieve that sort of like on a constant basis.
Yeah.
But then as you start to like blow up and expand, you have to kind of like, you have to change certain things and this and that. You know, I mean.
Right. You have to shift a little bit, but it's still very important to go back to your roots.
Right. So. And so the cookout that we did recently, that was great. I mean, everybody had a great time. Food was great. And I just think that that's awesome. That's how we're supposed to do it.
Right. And I want to do more of it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they're on the books.
Yeah, I think I actually do have a couple of events coming up. So
At least once a season.
to be continued on that
Yeah.
for sure. And I have actually some exciting partnerships that I'm excited to share with the team. I'm not quite ready yet to share with you or even with soon, very soon.
All right.
So the next upcoming episodes that we have going on is actually next week. We're going to interview Jordan first.
I saw that. I saw that he was a guest.
Yes, we're going to interview Jordan first, and then we'll do Adam next after that. And then we have a couple of other ideas for upcoming episodes and stuff, and some more interviews that I would love to have people come in here and talk. Even people in our company, other employees or colleagues.
That would be
but
great.
also even some of our vendors or whatever. I don't know. It's just I feel there's a lot of podcasts out there regarding landscaping.
Yeah.
There's just not, I feel like, a lot of this, and especially, women in the landscape industry. I think it's 9%.
Yes, and I feel like that itself. First of all, we're talking about we're going to interview Jordan and Adam. Those are going to be exciting. Those are going to be fun.
Yeah.
But I still think, like you were saying earlier, I mean, we still have a whole bunch of your story to go as well, because you just told us how you got to North by.
Yeah, I just told you the beginning.
You didn't tell us how you got to start
10 years.
podcasts. And then the women in the industry thing too, having had you as a leader and a supervisor in multiple roles as I've come through and as I've kind of journeyed my way through North by, but also being married to a person in the landscape industry, both of us. Well, I'm married to a woman. You're not, but you are a woman in the landscape industry, and I just think that will be that's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. I'm really challenging myself to really bring light to it, and just be as loud as the men in the landscaping world. So
I have full confidence in you.
We can do it with your help.
I'll be here.
Rob and I.
I'll be here.
All right, well, stay tuned. Thanks, guys.
Until the next time.